Hi, this is David Unsworth, host of the PanAm Post English podcast. Today we'll be speaking with Mariia Chaplia. Mariia graduated from the Taras Shevchenko University in Kyiv with a degree in law from the Civil and Political School in Global Affairs. Mariia has been involved in Students for Liberty since 2016, first as a local coordinator, then as a national coordinator for European Students for Liberty, and most recently as chair of Ukrainian Students for Liberty. In March 2017, Mariia won the European Students for Liberty Student of the Year Award. She is currently interning with SFL as a Communications and Development Associate and studying management at the Charles Koch Institute in their internship program. Mariia, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Former Donald Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort was recently charged with money laundering and tax evasion related to lucrative consulting work he undertook for the pro-Russian Ukrainian government under Viktor Yanukovych. Trump fired Manafort in August when details began to emerge about his Ukrainian ties. While the Manafort charges precede his work with the Trump campaign, there is concern in the Trump administration that Robert Mueller will use the new charges as leverage to get information on interaction between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. The charges relate to lobbying work that Paul Manafort did between 2006 and 2015 when he is accused of acting as an unregistered agent of Viktor Yanukovych. So the first thing I'd like to ask you about, Mariia, is what happened in 2014 when Yanukovych was deposed as president? Why did the Maidan Revolution happen, and why did Yanukovych ultimately flee to Russia?
Well, I'd like to start with explaining why the Maidan Revolution happened. So one of the main reasons is that Viktor Yanukovych agreed to sign the agreement with the European Union. As far as I remember, it happened someone in September or October, and then he suddenly changed his mind and said that he's not going to sign this agreement.
Why did he change his mind?
Well, from my point of view, I would say that he was choosing between two options. One was the union with Russia. One was to choose the east vector of development for Ukraine, more united with Russia, Belarus, and all those other countries. And the other option was the European Union, meaning the Western way of development for Ukraine. So the problem is also in the fact that Ukraine is kind of divided when it comes to perception of Europe. Well, it used to be at that period of time. So we have Western Ukraine, from which I originally come from, and this is a very pro-European Ukraine, because if you look back in history, Western Ukraine was under Austro-Hungarian Empire, under Poland, and because of this, I think it's kind of understandable when those ties with Europe are very close. On the other hand, you have Eastern Ukraine, and Viktor Yanukovych comes from the Eastern Ukraine, and basically he was elected by the Eastern Ukraine. This is very pro-Russian Ukraine, because it was under the Russian Empire, and their mindset is very different from the one we have in the Western Ukraine, which is more religious, but at the same time you can see those sorts of private property is more common than in the Eastern Ukraine, because they are more close to Russia and they speak Russian, while Western Ukraine speak mostly Ukrainian. So I think, in my opinion, Yanukovych used to be a good partner with Putin, it's obvious, and when Yanukovych was the president, I also remember there was a debate between oligarchs, and they were trying to persuade Yanukovych not to sign this agreement with the European Union, mostly oligarchs from Donetsk, which is currently the area which is where the war with Russia is happening.
And
so I remember some of their arguments were like, if Ukraine is going to enter the European Union, then our companies is going to suffer losses, because we are going to face the competition, and we are not prepared to face it. Like in Ukraine, there wasn't that much competition at that time because you had many oligarchs and the market was not so diverse. So obviously it didn't play to their advantage, and Yanukovych was very much backed by those oligarchs.
So
in my opinion,
Viktor Yanukovych has been accused of various corruption charges. Can you tell us about what those are, and how did they relate into his deposition in 2014, and why he fled to Russia?
Well, yes. I think that the system which Viktor Yanukovych created in Ukraine, it was corrupted at its very core, and I also dare say that he became the president because of corruption. Because in Ukraine, most of the periods of time when Yanukovych was elected president, we didn't have the system of fair elections. I'm not going to say that we achieved it at different periods of time, but still. So he became president because of corruption, and then obviously that he wanted to usurp power. So when he was president, corruption, no one even wanted to hide it. It was everywhere at courts, and the situation was, I think, the most terrible things happens at courts and with police, because all of them were backed by Yanukovych, and it was really like a police state when was president. And because of the fact that he managed to gain the support of police and of the court system, it also explains why we had all those killings. So many people died during Maidan Revolution. They all supported him, and they were very loyal to him. So that's why they didn't take into account the fact that they are going to kill the people of the who are the nationals of the same country, because they were backing the president, not the people who rebelled against the president. Does it make sense?
Yeah, and what is the public image of Viktor Yanukovych now? What is his opinion, and what is the public opinion of him among the Ukrainian people? Is he still popular in eastern Ukraine or in a place like Donetsk or Luhansk?
I don't think he's popular at all. Well, our current president is not popular at all. I just remember that when he fled to Russia, he recorded many videos from Russia claiming that he is still a legitimate president and he's going to come back to Ukraine and to regain his power. When we talk about Viktor Yanukovych, it's important to say that he is just a single figure, and there were many people who backed him, and he has his own political party, and it was all very interconnected, like oligarchs, bribed court system, and the political party he was in. Same goes about the parliament,
which is called the Party of Regions, correct?
Yes, but the interesting fact is that after Yanukovych fled to Russia, they changed, I think in a year, before the next elections, they changed the name. So many of those people who were with Yanukovych, they just changed the flags, and they still remain within Ukrainian political system, but under a different name, and they use different narratives, but they are still backed by some people in Ukraine, which is quite interesting. But it's again the paternalism of Ukrainian society. You can come up with a different narrative, and you will win votes.
So, turning the discussion back to Paul Manafort and his recent indictment, how well known is it in Ukraine that Viktor Yanukovych was paying for this very expensive lobbying on the part of the American government? I mean, there's Paul Manafort is accused of setting up offshore bank accounts in Cyprus and funneling $75 million in payments through those bank accounts, of which he laundered about 18 million of those dollars into the United States. Does the Ukrainian public know about this? Are they concerned about this? Was this part of the corruption allegations against Yanukovych?
Well, I don't know whether it's part of those allegations. I know that the Ukrainian prosecutors are now mainly trying to. The allegations against Yanukovych is mostly because of what happened during Maidan Revolution, and not the corruption he was involved in. But there are several cases, so I think they will definitely get there. Concerning the public opinion. I would say that when it comes to Yanukovych, public opinion, many Ukrainians, they assumed that the scale of all those corruption schemes created by Yanukovych, they are very extensive. But I wouldn't say that now Ukrainians basically would very much take into account what Yanukovych was doing back in those years, because I think that for now there are many problems with the current president, and he didn't live to the expectations of Ukrainian society. And I think that it's still important, but I wouldn't say that it basically changes something and all those problems Ukrainians are facing now.
Is this covered in the Ukrainian media? Is this issue with Manafort covered in the Ukrainian media? Are people talking about it right now in Ukraine?
Well, I don't know. I'm not in Ukraine now, but I didn't see it covered in Ukrainian media. So maybe it was, but I myself didn't see it.
How did Yanukovych get elected in the first place? I mean, is it just that his popularity was so high at the time in eastern Ukraine that he won a very close election and most of western Ukraine didn't vote for him, or what happened? And how did he go from being so popular to being so unpopular in a short period of time?
Well, I would say that yes, he was mostly supported by Eastern Ukraine, and he had his own party which was supported which supported him. But I also would say that he appeared at the time when Ukrainians were disappointed with with his predecessor, and it's always like this with Ukraine. Ukrainians believe that they can elect someone better, someone to suit their preferences. But I'd like to come back to this issue. You have Eastern Ukraine and have Western Ukraine. So the problem is that for many years, Ukrainians have been making efforts to elect the presidents who would fit into the perception of the world that Western Ukraine has and the Eastern Ukraine. When it comes to Yanukovych, I think that there were many elections in Ukraine are mostly unfair, and at the time he got elected, it was very easy to bribe someone so that you can get votes. I even remember that he was paying people so that they can vote for him, like offering he would buy them some, well, not he, but I mean all of his team. They were traveling all over Ukraine and offering people something like they would buy them rice or any other product
food,
so that they can vote for them.
Viktor Yanukovych would buy elections with food. So in your opinion, his election was not won in a free and fair election?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's my point.
We've been speaking with Mariia Chaplia. Mariia, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And good luck.
Pleasure.
Good luck in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.